Today on Waking Up in America, I'm chatting with David DeLoach, an incredibly talented musician and teacher from Franklin, Tennessee. David talks about his journey from being a successful young guitarist to giving it all up in order to find some balance, only to, years later, wake up with a dream he couldn't remember. David shares the wisdom he learned along the way, and then him and I play an old song the Southern style, right on his back porch. I'm Tai Chi. At 19, I was a superstar, and I was lost inside. I left it all behind, switched continents, and started all over. Years later, I found myself lost again, this time in the American dream. This is a story about awakening, about living the life you were created for, about going inward and discovering the joyous and purposeful person you and I are both meant to be. This is Waking Up in America. David DeLoach, thank you. I'm so glad to be here in this wonderful room.
Well, I'm glad you're here in this wonderful room.
Yes. Tell us where we are.
Okay, we're in the music room of my home here in Tennessee.
Wow. And you have all these guitars on the walls. I think that's like as far as storage goes, the best place for a guitar is not in a case, it's on the wall.
Yeah, it makes it easier to get them down and play them. I tend to play them more if they're easier to get to. Yeah.
That's the key. You know, I hear a lot of people as I travel, oh, I have a guitar, but it's somewhere, it's in a case, and it's been a case in the attic for so long. But if it's right there, right?
Right.
Even if you forgot about it, if you haven't touched it in 10 years, you just might grab it.
That's true, yeah.
So you teach. You have a wonderful series of, well, first of all, you teach my son, and you teach me how to play.
Right.
Since I'm in Nashville, I
Good students, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I figured I gotta play, right? My dad was a guitarist, and I was always shy to play in front of him because he was, he was my dad. He was.
Right.
So I'm glad to have you, to be your neighbor and to be your student.
Oh, yeah. Likewise.
Then when I learned about your story, wow. So here we are.
Right.
And now I'd like you to share this path of yours.
Okay. My parents gave me a $5 guitar for Christmas when I was 11. And we lived on an Army base, Fort Rucker, Alabama, and they didn't know what else to get me. They got me this guitar. I hadn't asked for one.
And your parents were not musicians?
My dad played the ukulele. My mom played the piano a little bit.
Okay.
But, so they could play. Yeah, they had some musical gifting there. There's music in our home. But they bought me this cheap guitar. I got that thing Christmas morning, and I was hooked. Couldn't put it down. I took a few lessons from an old white-haired lady in an Army barracks. She'd sit there, and there'd be 8 of us kids all plugged into the same amplifier, and she'd chain smoke and tell us we were making our chords wrong. And I learned a little bit from her, 3 or 4 songs. And my brother-in-law started coming around dating my sister, and I learned a lot from him. A lot of John Denver and Jim Croce and Simon and Garfunkel. And
great stuff to play on guitar.
Yeah,
yes.
And then I got into folk music, started playing fiddle, mandolin, banjo, dobro, bluegrass flat picking, blues, really got into the folk scene there, and just practiced all the time. I was a fairly shy young man, and if I wasn't reading or doing schoolwork, I was kind of sequestered in my room practicing.
Was that your world where you felt comfortable, safe? Or?
Yeah, I think it was an escape. I think it was a way for me to validate myself, because when I learned to do something new on the guitar, I felt more valuable as a person. Now, I don't really think that's an accurate assessment of your value, but was kind of my mindset. And so I love to learn. There wasn't a type of music I didn't want to learn. But my father was in the military. He was a test pilot. Loved my dad, great guy. And I guess I just kind of found myself as an aerospace engineering student at Texas A&M. I did a little work for General Dynamics on the F-16 in their attack avionics department.
That's very different from the music world.
Yes. And there was a day I looked up and just thought, this is not me. Oh. I could do the stuff, but there was no passion there. And I looked around at the people that had been doing it for 20 or 30 years, and I thought, I don't want to do this. And much to my parents' delight, I'm being sarcastic, I quit and I went and
Wow.
became a full-time musician. And I was playing in a rock band in Lake Tahoe, and dead broke, but living the dream. And I thought, this is it. And I studied guitar at North Texas State off and on for 3 or 4 years. And during that time, if I was awake, I was doing music. I was either in class, or I was studying or practicing or gigging. And it was not unusual for me to practice 6 to 8 hours, 7 days a week, and to gig 5 or 6 nights a week. It was just all that I did.
All the time.
It was a little bit out of balance, to be honest, because I think I mentioned I was a pretty shy young man, and it got worse the more I dove into music. I was incapable of having a conversation with another person unless we were talking about music. There came a point, is 1982, met this beautiful Argentine girl that I've been married to for 33 years, and she kind of pulled me out of my shell. And my life really needed an adjustment. I was way out of balance. And a lot of things changed in my life that year. But to make a very long story very short, I put my guitar down. And I put it in, I remember I put my old Martin D18 in a case, and I shut the lid. And it was like shutting a coffin lid.
Oh,
And it was like a death, that I thought, I'm not going to be a guitarist. This is all I've ever wanted to be. This is who I was. And I'm not going to do it.
Why?
Well, my life was way out of balance. It really was. And it was probably, I swung too far on the pendulum the other direction. Life was kind of measured by how fast I could play songs on the metronome, what was my last gig like, my acceptance as a musician. And it was really rather empty. It was. I was up on stage every night, people were clapping, got to play with some great musicians, and I thought, I never have really focused on money, and I thought, I don't care how much money I make. If I can do this and make a living, man, I've made it. And I had a crummy apartment and a crummy car, and lots of really nice guitars, and that was my world. And it was a painfully lonely world. It really was. And in 1982, when I met my wife, I also had an encounter with God that really changed my life. And I just thought, you know what? I'm just going to kind of hit the reset button here and start over and see what happens. I wound up getting married that year. I changed my vocation from being a professional musician to being a ditch digger. I wound up getting a full ride scholarship out here in Nashville to a school, and I I got a degree in theology out here.
Wow.
I never wanted to work in a church or anything, but I thought, maybe this is a way to find out about God. But when they handed my diploma at the end of it all, I thought, well, I don't feel any closer to God from all this stuff I learned in my head.
So wait, and at this point you're already married?
Yes.
And your wife is okay with all of this? And you have...
She's a trooper. Yeah, she's put up with a very unusual guy for a long time.
She's an Argentinian, and all I know about Argentina is passion and tango, right?
Yes.
All right, and here's David. I'm going to go learn about God.
My wife is full of life and emotion, but she's also an adventurer and a risk taker, and she's been very supportive of all my wild endeavors. And she's the one that reminds me we're on an adventure. So
beautiful.
She's a great life partner for me.
Well, obviously she was, meant to be.
Right. Yes, definitely. But so I got this degree, and I thought, well, now what am I going to do? And I tried to get a job. They were building 840 out here, and I wanted to be a welder. I thought I'd maybe run a dump truck or a backhoe. I could not get a job scraping gum off the bus station floor. And for 9 months, I did odds and ends things, but my self-esteem took a real hit because I'd been this construction worker, guitar player. I'd done all kinds of jobs. And I couldn't really get any real work. And I really took a hit on my self-esteem, got really low. The one place I did not want to step foot was in the corporate world, and especially at a bank in the corporate world. And lo and behold, where do I get a job? Working at a bank.
Yes,
and
that's how it works.
I didn't own a suit. I didn't know how to tie a necktie. And I find myself working in a bank, this multi-million-dollar big bank, as a consultant. to go around these different departments in the bank and tell them how to work better. And to this day in my life, I've never balanced a checkbook. So I was thinking, why am I here? This is the roundest peg in the squarest hole ever. Like, God's just having a big laugh. Let's put the most unqualified guy in this spot. And I was miserable. I just thought, my gosh, this is awful.
Yeah, I'm really curious to hear why, what lesson, what is there?
In my studies of theology, I think I'd become religious in a bad way, and thus the misery in my life. And somewhere along the way in the late 80s, I kind of just met the real God, and it's like, it was so refreshing, and I got filled with a lot of life and a lot of hope. And I thought, okay, man, I'm just trusting you with my path here. So I just started working hard at it, and I had a lot of favor on my work, and I had some articles published in some national periodicals, and I did a bunch of big projects there, and they asked me to manage their telecommunications for this whole region. And then I went to work for Deloitte and Touche, managing like 80 offices, all their telecom for that in the United States. And then
okay, so everything you touch, everything you have interest for, you master, you learn.
I wouldn't say that,
no,
but I like to learn.
Yes.
When I'm in IT, I'm reading all these big fat books about IT. Part of it was I was thankful to have a job, because I started having kids, and I was like, well, it's good to be able to pay the rent and buy food. But part of me is like, wow, is this really the field I was meant to plow? Wearing the suit and all that. And then I went to work for a Wall Street firm for 14 years. And it was a real pressure cooker. It was a real experience. Working with some great people up there. Towards the end of that 14 years that I had my awakening.
Although I detected several shifts on your path already.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So, in around 1990, my mom had given me $50 for Christmas. And I thought, I'm going to go buy a songbook. And I had one old guitar in the closet that was worn out, wouldn't stay in tune. But I bought this songbook, and I thought, I'm going to see if I can still play. And I got it out, and I started relearning. This was 1990. And so I kind of fiddled around with it there for, I guess, about 15 years. I had young kids. 3 weeks would go by, I didn't touch it, and then I'd play for 3 weeks in a row, and I feel like my fingers were coming back to life, and then I wouldn't touch it for another 2 months. And it was 2 steps forward, 3 steps back kind of thing. But so in 2005, July 7th, I believe was the date, I was at a doctor appointment with my daughter. At her checkup, I had this episode where I got extremely tired. I had a big pain in my chest here. I got dizzy. My chest got tight. Had trouble breathing. And I felt like the life was leaving my body. I felt like my body was going stiff. And it was a horrible feeling inside, like I was full of bee stings and poison and arthritis. It just was like, wow. And I thought, this is it. I'm putting on the jetpack. Here I go. I wasn't freaking out. I just thought, this is it. I'm dying.
Wow.
And my wife was there. She said I turned as white as a sheet. My eyes rolled up in my head, fell on the floor. And there was a nurse in there at the time. And so I fall on the floor thinking I'm dying. And I have these incredible dreams. And I woke up on the floor. I said, what happened? And I felt refreshed and cleansed, and like I'd been laying in a mountain stream, just it felt like clear water had been running through me. I felt so wonderful. I felt drunk.
Wow.
And I said, what happened? And they're like, we're taking you to the hospital.
Right.
And they took me there for 2 or 3 days and did all these tests and scans. And they said, we can't find anything wrong with you. You did not have a heart attack. You're fit as a fiddle. I couldn't stand up for a couple of days. My legs were shaky. But after 3 days, I was ready to come home. I came home. And I kept asking myself, what were those incredible dreams I had during that 5 minutes where I went from feeling like death and waking up feeling so wonderful? And I kept saying, what were those incredible dreams? I can't remember. What were they? And I was walking out here on my road one night, probably 5 months after the fact. And I said, God, I really want to know. What were those incredible dreams I can't remember? And he told me, those incredible dreams I couldn't remember were the incredible dreams that I couldn't remember. It was the dreams of my youth that I'd forgotten, of being a musician. And I instantly understood those dreams will bring you back to life.
Yes.
Because although I was alive in a lot of ways, like my family life was great, I had good friends, I'd learned how to talk to people, I wasn't shy anymore. But vocationally, I was a little bit like a zombie, kind of like The Walking Dead. That's when I thought, I'm not a technology guy who plays guitar. I'm a guitarist that does technology. And that internal shift of my identity really changed everything.
Yeah.
At that point, I started writing my book. Spent years writing this 400-page book that a professor at Berkeley wound up using for a time, which was a real honor. Jamie Abersol picked it up on his jazz education catalog. I started making YouTube how-to videos, and I've had like 2.5 million hits on those so far.
Incredible.
I started gigging out again, just in bars and clubs, anywhere I could go, and teaching. And why? While probably a lot of your guests may have had an awakening and quit the day job and just started something new, I'm still in my day job. I still like my day job. I like the people I work with. For me, having that job gives me freedom musically that I wouldn't otherwise have. Life's kind of like a jigsaw puzzle. You throw out all the pieces, and it looks like what a mess. But the farther down the road you get, the more pieces interconnect. All of a sudden, you start to see a good picture starting to form, and you go, wow, all these things that I didn't think would ever connect actually did. And it worked out to make a pretty cool picture. So I'm not one that, I didn't ride off into the sunset and make $1 million playing guitar. But what I did was I became alive.
Yes, it's the internal shift. It sounds like every other time you went from one thing to another, but weren't changed.
Right.
Nothing really changed. This time you stayed in the same situation, right? You didn't leave, you didn't move, you didn't leave your job, you didn't get divorced.
Right.
None of that external shifts.
Right.
It was really just you shifted inside.
I've had some incredible opportunities that surprised me because, face it, we live in Nashville. I could go out the door here and shake a tree and 10 musicians better than me would fall out of that tree. And if you compare yourself to other people, you'll never get started. But I thought, I don't care, I'm just going to go do it. And so, I was invited to play with the Nashville Symphony at the Schermerhorn. What a trip. I'm sitting there on that stage thinking, how in the heck did I wind up here?
How did you feel at that moment?
I felt like I was in heaven. I was able to play that session. It went really well. And again, I thought, why am I here? Well, all the great guitar players in Nashville, why am I here?
Why do you think you were there?
Yeah, I don't know. But, I believe that when you know who you are, that it does something to open doors. It's not based on my skill level or my ability to schmooze and impress people, because I'm not good at that. Still, opportunities present themselves that really just charge me up.
You just said it. Once we know who we are, once we find our purpose, because
Right.
when we embrace that who we are inside and our unique gifts that we're created with, then we are able to show up. We say, okay, here I am.
Right.
And the doors open, because like you said, we trust that this picture that we're part of is beautiful, it's perfect. And when you teach, it comes through, and you are then making these ripples of change.
When you know who you are, it helps you make decisions. You come to a fork in the road, and it helps you know which way to go. There's been probably 20 years where I stayed up way too late at nights studying the guitar. And I'd go to bed at 1 or 2 in the morning, and I would think, what am I doing? This makes no sense. Am I just a 15-year-old kid that never grew up, and I'm still in here playing guitar, or what? And because I could have gotten an MBA or a CPA with all the time I put into that, but an MBA and a CPA wasn't my DNA. It was my DNA was, I'm a musician. You cut me down to the bone, it says guitar player right there on the bones.
Yes.
And I just decided to take the risk to invest my energies in who I am.
Oh, yes.
And it's a choice that I'm glad I made. Again, I'm not driving a Ferrari or, able to retire from my day job from this, but I guarantee there's some nights I come home from a gig And my wife will ask me, how'd it go? And I said, I'm pretty sure I just extended my lifespan by a year.
Wow.
Because I had so much fun. And it was just such a wonderful experience getting to plow the field that I was meant to plow.
Thank you so much, David.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
I'm standing by my window on one cold and cloudy day, when I saw that hearse come rolling for to carry my mother away. Will the circle be unbroken by and by, Lord, by and by? There's a better home awaiting in the sky, Lord, in the sky. Oh, I followed close behind her, tried to hold up and be brave, but I could not hide my sorrow when they laid her in a grave. Will the circle be unbroken by and by, Lord, by and by? There's a better home awaiting in the sky, Lord, in the sky. Will the circle be unbroken by and by, Lord, by and by? There's a better home awaiting in the sky, Lord, in the sky. In the sky, Lord, in the sky. That was cool.
Yeah.
The stories we feature here are for you, to help you to wake up from somebody else's dream and live the life that you were created for. So join us for more support and more episodes at wakingupinamerica.net, and join our Facebook group, Waking Up in America, and everywhere else in the world. Thank you so much. See you next time.